The fish and seafood industry is a global industry. We have been moving fish and seafood all over the world for a long time. In fact, fish and seafood changes hands more than any other ingredient in our food and beverage supply chain, on average, 9 to 10 times. So, that poke bowl that you love so much, that's that yellowfin tuna, the odds are it's coming from Indonesia. And those waters, we know that there are a lot of poor practices all the way from bad fishing practices, bad gear practices, to practices of slavery, frankly, in the supply chain where the fishermen are so badly treated. But there are fisheries where you can trace it, like through fair trade seafood, where you can trace that all the way to the family and the small boats that are two family members that are fishing that fish. So again, it's no different than a commodity corn to an organic corn. You still can have fish and seafood from a global supply chain, but you have to know where it comes from. Don't go up to the seafood counter or the menu blindly. Ask where the seafood comes from. Tell me where you get it from. Have them go look on the box. What's the species? What's the country of origin? Start a conversation because you want to encourage those groups to start to know where their seafood comes from in order to be able to start a supply chain that is no longer blind.
This is huge. The whole supply chain being no longer blind. And it does start with our responsibility to ask. I think I've been told many times I've got patients that work at all levels in the food chain process, and I've been told that the questions we ask are they change the policies in the whole system all the way along, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And especially with retailers and with restaurants, the more questions you ask, the more likely they are to open up that aperture and make sure that you have some transparency. I always find it interesting that menus will call out if they supply a local salad green. Oh, it's from this farm, these little baby romaine lettuce, or the peaches come from Dry Creek Orchard. But or the wine. Let's talk about wine. Provenance in wine has been around forever. You know where it came from, the year, you know the winery. It's all, completely transparent. Same with things like oysters. Oysters are almost always named for the name of the farm, a seafood example. So, what we really need is to make sure that we're supporting the ones where we know it comes from, not eliminating fish and seafood altogether. It's one of the most nutritious and abundant foods on the planet with the lowest carbon footprint. It is the food of the future. So we might as well at this point get used to the taste of kelp and seaweed because we're going to produce more kelp and seaweed in the US than potatoes by 2040. And you can return oceans to abundance, and it's zero inputs. So, why not change the ocean by the way you snack by eating a kelp chip instead of a potato chip? And there never has been a communication strategy around the importance of foods from water. Just the very fact that there have been these designations by the UN and other countries, even the importance of things like the Magnuson Stevenson Act and the growth of aquaculture in the United States. But very rarely do you sit down when we're speaking about larger food system conversations and somebody says, let's talk about fish and seafood. Usually it's about regenerative agriculture, it's about becoming vegan or vegetarian, that we can move away from animal proteins. And most of the reason why is because what's happening with animal proteins and the proteins on land and the poor rearing tactics of these. So, one of the things about Fed by Blue was myself, co founder Jill Kaufman Johnson, co founder Catherine Breyer, was we felt that there needed to be an organization that was agnostic, that was not funded by industry, that was funded by those that were protecting the ocean, private family offices and foundations, that really stood on good science. We work with the Blue Food Assessment, which is an organization based at Stanford University, the University of Stockholm, of hundreds of scientists worldwide that are talking about, that are vetting the science, that are reading, and researching and writing the papers that all say that we can support and be supported by this food system. And we felt that at Fed by Blue, along with other partners like Andrew Zimmern, who's an executive producer of our show, David E. Kelly, who's a renowned executive producer in Hollywood, those that had been championing foods from water are making this journey with us. The advisory board is made up of the Nature Conservancy, the Environmental Defense Fund, the World WWF, Alexandra Cousteau's Oceans 2050, Julia Ormond's assets that's making sure that the supply chain and the labor around it is getting better. So, really taking all of the experts, standing on solid science, and saying Fed by Blue can now begin to amplify the importance of this through the activities like the docu series and other things that we have launching in June.